So let's talk a little bit.
Can we do something?
Sure.
I don't want you to say high expectation. I want you to say practical expectations.
Practical expectations.
The reason why I say practical is because when we say high,
right.
we think that
psychological.
It is not
make
the
it
ability
too far away from
that
us.
We can't attain it nor
right,
do it.
Right.
But when we say practical expectations, these are day-to-day things that should be walked out, that God has an expectation. Now, vicariously, they're high expectations, but yet they are practical day-to-day expectations.
I love that for us all, and I love that for men, because I feel like men need to hear that so that they can come back to the Lord and reestablish a relationship and have realistic expectations when they do get here. So we're just going to talk a little bit about men who have fell. And like I said, you're in great company, and I will have to put this in there again, that we're not setting people up to fall, but we're going with the scripture that says, if you sin, not when or you have to, but if. So that leaves room for development. So here are the men. Adam fell through disobedience, right?
Right.
And then shifted the blame instead of taking responsibility.
Ooh, that's a big one. Okay, so when you deal with Adam and the story of Adam, I think sometimes we rush through that story. We rush through that encounter where Adam had a responsibility of maintaining God's culture.
Right.
So that high responsibility of maintaining God's culture and understanding that he chose to do something or rebel against God.
Right, willful.
It was a willful choice. Decision. It was a willful decision.
Right.
And so that willful decision had a consequence that came with it.
Right.
You know, and so that I think that story, it speaks volumes because he refuses to take accountability for his actions and refuses to take accountability in the totality of what was expected of him.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. And there is a lot of responsibility. And I kind of think about The Godfather, and it talks about how men and women are different, right?
Right.
And
says,
the way they explain it.
Right. He says, women and children can be careless. Men don't have the luxury of being careless.
Right.
And we love that movie, Godfather, but that's not a sexist term.
No, it's not.
He's actually talking about men that take care of business, that represent their family.
Right.
And Adam represented a beginning stages of a family.
Right.
And acting reckless, we don't quite understand the ramifications that come with it.
Right. I respect it.
Yeah.
I respect it because, I don't want to turn this into something else, but I'm not trying to get on the front line in front of my family like this.
Right.
I'll pray, but that's not my heart's desire. And I know that in case of emergency, I could.
Right.
But I don't wake up every morning thinking that, I'm the head of my family. I'm responsible.
Right.
I don't carry that weight. You talked about that being shoulders and hips.
Men are bred for, men are built, responsibility is meant for shoulders and not hips.
Right.
And when you cover the story of Adam, he shirked, he did not live up to his responsibility.
Right.
Then his accountability, he pushed it off onto somebody else, onto his wife.
Well, is that happening today?
100%.
She gained weight. She's mean. That's why I started the affair.
So
I
heard somebody say this. When God created Eve, he said she was good. So he cursed what God said was good.
Wow, his perception was off.
He says, this woman that you gave me have caused this problem. Or the woman you gave me. Right. So what he does is he blames God for the good that God gave him.
My God.
And not really living up to the accountability that God entrusted him to live up to. Right. And so because he refused to live up to the accountability, look what happens. He hides from the presence of God. He creates leaves, and they sew leaves together to cover their irresponsible act. things that are quickly going to die within a day or two, he covers himself with.
Right.
He doesn't answer the call of God. When
call to
God
be
asks him
responsible.
to be responsible,
Yes.
when God calls
Yes.
you, he's calling you
Right.
to show you
Right.
that you can level up.
Right.
He's calling
Right.
you to
He
show.
positions
He
you.
positioned you to
I
answer.
like that, to show up.
So when he says, when he fails to say, "Here am I," he is not fully prepared to stand to the place where God has established
I
him.
hear you saying, Pastor, then the fall has to do with when men are trying to stand on their own.
Yes.
Because if
Yes,
you stand on the word
yes,
of God,
yes,
there is
yes.
ability because he positioned him.
100%.
He
100%.
made him to be able to stand.
He built him that way.
All right,
he
let's move
built
on
him
because
that.
I'm ready to I'm ready to shout right there. And so it was lust and disobedience. So we might as well just slip right into David.
David,
2 Samuel 11.
David, seeing Bathsheba,
Right.
and the fact that he saw Bathsheba and his irresponsible act. One thing that we see in that story is careless. Mm-hmm. He was very careless, and because he was in a posture of carelessness, it caused him. Now, David was a woman guy. He listened. He loved women.
Right.
He married. Passionate. He was a very emotional, passionate. Married Abigail, and I mean, he was a passionate guy.
Right.
But the challenge is his irresponsibility in his decision that he made by choosing something that didn't belong to him.
Right.
And because of his voyeurism and him watching and being in a place that he should not have been, caused it further led to the decisions that he made that led him to be with somebody that didn't belong to him.
Right. So I hear you saying that he fell out of position.
Yes.
You know, he fell out of, even down to he was supposed to be at war.
Right.
That was a protection. Here's
the thing. The reason why they said that he wasn't at war because of one of the last wars that he was at, he almost got killed. And they said, how can the light of Israel go out and Israel survive?
Okay.
So what they did, he would stay back from war.
Okay.
But him staying back from war does not give him, it does not put him in position, because now what he did was usurp his authority.
Right. Can I interject this too, Pastor?
Yeah.
Because I feel like he disarmed himself psychologically and emotionally.
Yes.
He might have been tired from the war, but that doesn't mean that you get to not
You're
stay
always
in fighting position.
That's right, on guard.
So just because he wasn't in a physical war and he was tired, he let down his psychological armor.
That's right. That's right.
Which is God's word.
That's right.
He let down his shield, which is God's word and God's commandments.
That's right.
He just kind of was tired, like you said, respite, and he took it upon himself to rest everything.
Everything.
His morals were rested.
That's right.
And so how many times do men fall because they're tired?
Right. And
or stressed.
Yeah, and what's interesting, you're 100% right. What's interesting is that when you look at things, when you choose to entertain things, like we could look at social media, we could look at the television.
Right.
When we choose to watch a channel, sometimes people look at that P word, men,
porn,
that industry.
Right.
They do that with a choice.
Right.
By a choice.
Right.
And because they do that by a choice, it's like they're letting down the gate of their wall.
Right.
And because they're letting down the gate of their wall, something else has access to influence and impact them.
Right. And that's why I brought up the point that he psychologically let down his defenses, because I look at Joseph and he had every reason to let down his psychological his walls, because he was mistreated, he was tired, he didn't have his family, he was lonely. And I think men who fall into sexual sin and sexual temptation, the cognitive dissonance, they kind of resolve it by saying, well, my wife is not kind, or I've worked so hard, and I deserve to be happy, or I deserve this, and sometimes I've heard people in my profession, when I'm dealing with people, they feel like it's their reward. Wow. You don't know what I've been through. So me getting to participate in this, because it's just one way. It's not reciprocal. It's like the television is serving me.
Right.
So it's like it's actually soothing me and serving me,
Right.
and I deserve it.
Right.
You don't know what I've been through.
Right.
And so that's how they kind of deal with that dissonance of I shouldn't be watching this, but I am watching this. So they tell themselves, I deserve it.
Right. And here's another one. He was an unrighteous opportunist. He took an opportunity, and even though, yes, many of David's fights and many of David's encounters, he would capitalize on opportunities.
Right.
And because he used his authority, he perverted his authority, and he did an unrighteous opportunity moment.
Right.
And so in that unrighteous opportunity moment, the moment that he knew that she didn't belong to him,
right,
it should have stopped.
Right. Absolutely.
The moment he knew she didn't belong to him, because
and who he belonged to.
Like the question was, where was his other wife?
Yeah, and where was God?
Where was God? Where was God in the matter?
Who he belonged to.
So here, look, I understand he's on the roof looking, and the reason why she was bathing is because she was ceremonial unclean.
Right.
And she was bathing because of the women's cycle, so she was getting herself. But at what point, and then he invites her over, but the moment he recognizes she does not belong to him.
And I don't belong to her.
Now he has a decision to make. And because he decides, excluding righteousness, excluding God, excluding what he represented, he actually represented the very foundation of what God represented. He was considered as God's man, God's person in the earth.
Right.
And if he really truly had the heart as a man after God's own heart, he would have functioned and made a decision in that aspect. But because he chose to supersede, that means he was selfish.
Right.
He became selfish.
Right. And it's sexually gluttonous in that way, if I could put those two together. 100%. Because you brought up the point that he had a wife.
He had a wife. Abigail.
Wives, yeah.
He had wives.
So it wasn't that he was just not able to access intimacy.
Solomon was his youngest son. He just
wanted what he wanted.
Bathsheba was supposedly his last wife.
Right.
And so he had two other wives before.
That's just greedy.
Before Bathsheba.
Right. That goes back to what you're saying, not being able to control yourself.
Right.
So men are bombarded with images. You fall. I mean, you see women walking like half naked. So it's there's a lot of opportunities to fall.
Right.
And so when we move on, I wanted to talk about falling into violence or falling into sin, like Paul.
Ooh. It's interesting. I think I show a little bit more grace for Paul because his zeal.
Or even Moses, I should say. I think Moses was the one I had. Well, initially.
Moses.
Because he was angry. He fell into sin. Let's do Moses. Let's take Paul off the table. Brother Paul, you're free. We're back to Moses. I just remember that I had Moses. Okay, so, Brother Moses.
Okay, so Moses, I get it. I get it.
He fell into anger.
At the same time, what is implied there is that it's almost as if he acts out of character and he offends God because he acts out of character. All up until that point, when you read Deuteronomy says Moses fasted for 40 days twice.
Okay.
Twice.
Okay.
He intervened for the people when God wanted to take them out.
Right.
So his heart was for God's people. And his heart being for God's people, he was the representation for God in front of people.
Right.
The argument was that he misrepresented God.
Right.
I've
seen that, Pastor. I mean, honey, I've seen in the pulpit on the internet where people have cussed each other out because they're like, this is God's church. You don't tell me to stop.
He misrepresented God. He says, I think God says that you have presented me as being something.
Right. But so many men fall.
Well,
The Bible talks about in Proverbs how if you're a man that keeps his spirit is stronger than the mighty. So a lot of men fall into anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is something that men fall into. And then afterwards, they're embarrassed. They might be jailed. There might be consequences. You might lose partners. You might lose the affection of your family. You might, that anger, men fall into anger.
Right. At the same time,
Yeah.
falling into anger does not justify his responsibility was to speak to the rock and not hit the rock.
Right.
Because once God gives instructions, his anger does not supersede the instructions of God.
Right.
And so we can be righteously angry,
Right.
but my anger does not supersede what God's instructions are.
Right. It was unharnessed.
His
passion was unharnessed.
But that was
he was a right guy. That's why he
he was a right fighter.
Yeah.
He was a guy of high justice.
Right.
I mean, severe justice.
Right.
He was the guy that, even though he was severe justice, he understood that his responsibility was to God and to God's people.
Right.
And he often acted as the mediator when God wanted to take all the people away.
Right.
He would say, no, they will. He actually, what was so good is he looked out for God's reputation.
Right.
He looked out for God's reputation.
Right.
And looking out for God's reputation, he ensured that God wasn't even represented the wrong way in front of other people.
Right. And so his heart was there, but it was never his job description to show anger at the people.
It was not.
He was supposed to communicate
God's
heart towards the people. He was never supposed to demonstrate his heart.
And let's just talk about
because that's what he did. He demonstrated his heart.
And they got on his nerves.
They got on his nerves, but that was outside of his job description.
His last nerve. They were riding it.
That was outside of his job description.
And I get it.
How many times do men?
I get it.
What I found out about men is that your stress response is different than ours.
Now talk about that.
Yeah.
That's good.
For women, we get angry and we shoot back down and we go up and down the ladder and we have a baseline. Whereas with men, they have such a visceral reaction to stress or danger that their anger or their emotion goes off the chart and it slowly comes down.
Wow.
So it just the reaction alone, and I think that's
good.
I think that's because of your responsibility.
Yeah,
you're supposed to provide and protect, and so if you're not careful, it can really be damaging.
Right.
It can be really damaging, and we see that,
good.
and we've just interpreted that as, oh, you don't have communication. But I think I know that there's a visceral reaction to stress that changes the way you're feeling and how you're responding to it.
Right.
And I think that's how he got caught up. And it was his responsibility to know how to present his vessel and to kind of work with that. So men have a responsibility to understand that anger can be a weakness.
I want to read exactly what God told Moses.
Okay.
It says in Numbers 20, verse number 12, it says, Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. He says, because you did not believe me to hollow me. That's the key word. Hollow, to make me as righteous.
Right. His emotions
to
ahead.
Reverence me.
Right.
That to hollow me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. So that word, the key term is you refuse to hollow me in
to
the
bring
eyes,
your anger under submission.
Under control,
under subjection,
right.
Like it's almost like that emotional response is an offering,
right.
Because it can be God, and you can represent your anger in yourself, and not represent God. And I think that's something men, I mean, the violent crimes are just off the chart. And I know they're connected to rejection. I know they're connected to abandonment. I know they're connected to childhood adversities that were never reconciled. So men can kind of feel like, I get to protect myself through anger.
Yeah.
And I get to express myself through anger.
Oh.
Protect myself.
Because anger is an
express
easy
myself.
emotion for men.
Right. It really is.
Anger is an easy emotion.
And it is overt enough. You know, women are more covertly angry and men are overtly angry because society has given you permission to be angry. And you know, we're nice, nasty, you know, subliminals and all of that. But I said that because men are falling. Like, men are falling and they're, you know, they feel like they have no control over their anger. And so that's why, you know, when they break up now, they're unaliving family members. And it's just so much that they're not stewarding their emotional reaction. They're worshiping it.
I think
they're bowing down to it.
I think you hit it on the head. I firmly believe and I recognize it is cultural. We have created a culture where there are no boundaries. We have created a culture. Okay, let's take when we were coming up when I was younger. I knew where the line was.
Right.
And how far I can push it. But and then especially even when I got into the military, it taught me self-control.
Right.
Anger under control.
Right.
Because when you lose control, you tend to do things that will either cost the battle, cost men's lives to die, you can die, you put other people in danger.
It's a sword and a gun.
And so what has transpired is, even when I was working in my profession, if you lose control, other people die. Other people can get in trouble. Other people can be sued in a lawsuit, and they put in a predicament. So I firmly think that in today's society, the aspect of teaching men, young young boys to have self-control, and
harness the weapon.
I was sparring and I was sparring boxing, and I was doing my thing, and the guy told me, my partner, he says, the more control you have is the boxer that wins is the one that has the most control.
Right.
And so you can punch and get angry and lash out, but you will become undisciplined.
Right.
Even if you practice or you've been sparring all many years. The one who wins is the one that has the most control. So what happens is, in Moses' category, he loses control. And therefore, because he loses control, he puts God in a specific light, and now he loses the opportunity.
And he loses the credibility and some shame too, because he's been correcting them all along.
The whole time.
And it's like now they're waiting to say, aha.
Right. But you know what? Here's what's interesting. That incident, everybody didn't know what God told him.
Okay.
But Aaron knew. And Aaron equally had a responsibility to guard the holiness of God, to instruct. So that means it wasn't Moses by himself.
Right.
There was an accountability, Aaron to Moses.
Right. So